Ben Goldson here today. We're taking a little bit of a diagnostic, not really a diagnostic, but a word of advice for NPCs. And one of the biggest thing that I think people lack is I would honestly just say wonder. And why I say wonder, people have always, for instance, wondered where I got. I'm gonna say I probably have a decent IQ. Even dating back to like trivia in middle school, I had really good retention of knowledge from all sorts of places, and I was a good guesser. And so guessing, I think, comes from wonder. And I think wonder is just um, triggering your imagination to kind of go out there and grasp things. So I'm not going to quote studies because I don't quite know them off the top of my head, but I was lucky enough to hang out with one of the top neural trainers, I would say. Not someone I'm like super into, but Dr. Jim Hart in Sedona. And this is a dude who does very, I would just say, expensive brain training. Some of the top people in the world have come to see him. And he has labs in Sedona. He has a lab in Hamburg. He has a lab in Alberta, I think, or British Columbia, one of the two. But three different countries, he's doing his thing. And one of the things he said, just to validate his authority a little bit, is in alpha brainwaves, we're much more able to coherently grab information from our personal experience. But in theta brainwaves, the human has proven to be able to grab information they've never experienced. Like you've never learned that that thing does that, and it's a reliable way to handle that problem. And theta brainwaves, which is not really a waking brainwave, it's more sleep state, more drowsiness, meditation, allows you to grab information you've never experienced, and usefully grab it, use it. So we've done a lot of research on, the noosphere, the collective consciousness. We're all pretty much in agreement that the brain is a transmitter of energies and ideas and thoughts, and a receiver of information, of data, and they say consciousness is the reception of data, knowledge is knowing that that data is there, wisdom is knowing what to do with that data at the right time, at the right place to use a particular thing. So with NPCs, I feel like they really do lack the attempt to guess. There's this authority that they give themselves that they got it figured out already. So this is the dangerous thing. We call it the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is unintelligent people are known to overestimate their abilities, and ironically, intelligent people underestimate their abilities. And I think that comes from knowing there's so much potential, knowing there's such little guarantee in the universe. Back to you do an experiment 100 times and it's proven to be consistent, and then without changing any of the variables, a different outcome happens on the 101st. So stuff like that shows that we don't really know what's going on, and we try to be accurate, we try to gauge things properly. But NPCs do have a level of conviction in their beliefs. And why is that there? It's not necessarily that they're great intelligent people. It's more of, I would say, a character flaw. It's ego, it's assumption that they know, and that's tough. So I want to talk about guessing. I want to talk about agency in the mental. Agency is often a will thing, and often we don't equate it to the mental. So we understand things like the training of neural networks. I'm very big on the idea of myelination. Myelination is the more you fire a certain neural network, the more it strengthens, the stronger it is. Here's where it comes down to. So when you're being subconscious, you're not actively overriding your behavior, but you're kind of trying, but you're not so vigorous and earnest about it. The neural network that myelinates the fastest will probably be the one that goes. According to this theory, always is the one that goes, unless you use the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, which uses a lot of glucose, which is reliant on your fuel source to logically override, this is the better way to go about things. I'm going to do things this way. So myelination matters, so we understand with neuroscience that literally visualizing and thinking something actively, earnestly, can start to get neural networks to myelinate, to grow, you know? So right there, we have one of our first examples of the will, active intention and input, a guiding system that you're putting on your own mind. The will moves into the mental. You know, a lot of times people separate the two, and it's essential that we don't. It's essential that we understand this is, we got to do this shit. You got to use the will. So this is the idea. You know, I'm a big Omram bro, you know, spiritual teacher that I follow. He says this is the real taking the bull by the horns. You know, you use your will to direct your imagination. Your imagination is very subconscious. It's all this bubbling up of things that you've been fed prior to now. And you can't just say, oh, I don't want to think that, because there's so many variables that trigger something into happening. And so rather than just letting your imagination dominate you and, oh, I thought this thing, and so I'm going to go on and feel this and act that way. Again, we're so unconscious, subconscious, you know. It's not that you thought that thing, it's you were triggered into thinking that thing, maybe from environment, maybe from the music, maybe from Instagram, and then you don't stop and refuse to let these forces dominate you. And dominate's a big word, but I would say, you know, it might seem like it's not dominating you, it might seem like it's subtle, but again, if you can't forcefully, and I'm not saying like, but just through intention, through an attempt at self-mastery, put your own inputs into your head, put your own inputs through your will, through your agency. If you can't do that, you're reliant on being, you're passive, you're reactive, you're not creative, you're not intentional. And that's one of the big aspects of NPCs that I just feel is one of their worst flaws, is that they just react. And one of the worst things about that is they come very much under group think spells. So it's interesting when you have all these concepts in the world and there's so much data and there's so much dispute. And I'll give you a random example, you know, like for the longest time we thought, like, this is a shitty example, I wish I could come up with something better, but for instance, people will say like, oh, everything gives you cancer, you know, there's no reason to be healthy because everything gives you cancer. And it's like, actually, we know for a fact a lot of things stop cancer, stop the growth of cancer cells, directly fight the cancer cells. And so what I'm trying to get at here is you see definite growth in science and the realizations that we have, where there's groupthink that has come to a consensus often decades ago, and they double down and they stay there. Meanwhile, the world keeps moving and we adapt and we understand things, and we understand things are fake or outdated, or that's actually a good thing. All that shit happens. And meanwhile, NPCs are still advocating for groupthink. And it's just like, that comes down to the lack of agency. That comes down to they don't even want to ponder and guess and use the gift of wonder. So I'm bringing up an idea, and this is just the idea of wonder and how do you do it surgically. So I would say, let's look at it like a cell. Let's look at a subject as a cell. And so there's a cell, there's a boundary to that cell, the membrane. And then within the membrane, there's all these things that are happening. There's a nucleus, which is responsible for that. I don't even know what's in a cell, but all these intercellular happenings inside the cell. So inside a subject, there's themes, there's technical aspects of the subject. And then outside of the cell, there's other cells, there's other things, other forces, and that's extracellular. You know, I don't know if that's the right words, but in this regard it is. And so what we want to do with concepts is we kind of want to create some level of a boundary around a concept and look at what's happening within that domain, and what are the things that are happening. This is called what's the word? There's negative space in our head where it could be filled with knowledge. It's like negative space in a photo. It's like, why is that there? It should be filled with something. You know what I'm saying? So that mental negative space, it doesn't take a lot of time to contemplate that. And, I have a little list right here. So you encounter a subject, you intuit it has hidden layers, you build a rough boundary around it, you ask what forces act inside it, you ask what forces act outside of it, and you compare it to other systems you understand, and then your mind starts triangulating. So you see inside, outside, inputs, outputs, membranes, boundaries, flows, pressures, adaptations, and environments. So obviously, I'm not going to say this is like a perfect list, but you see like trigger points. When I bring up trigger points, it's like a lot of times there's like nerdy knowledge, geeky knowledge, and what I mean by that, it's like knowledge that isn't actionable. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can tell me all the stats on something, but I want to understand how to make it actionable. I want to understand how this is relevant to me. I want to understand how I can gain from this idea. And so we got to look at like trigger points, or how does that input through optimization get a better output? Or how are there bad inputs coming into there that we can figure out, oh, I don't want those outputs. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's another thing that's worth mentioning. And you got to wonder, a lot of this comes down into this. I'm building this Aura course. I don't want to shamelessly plug it right here, but as I'm studying Omram, he talks about the causal body. So we have a mental body, and this is a big thing that's going to kill NPCism. And unfortunately, it's spiritual. I know a lot of these people have fucking no soul, so they're like don't know how to grasp this stuff, and no disrespect, but it be like that. And so we have a mental body, but then there's a higher mental body we call the causal body. And the causal body is where ideas are originating from. And I know it's a weird thing to say, but we live in a cosmic, multi-dimensional reality, and the causal body starts to take up more of space in us when we're contemplating laws and principles and the structure of how the universe is really set up. And so to not hurt ourselves, we can't be on that Dunning-Kruger effect. That means also on the over intelligent side of things, where we act like we can't know or will never know, we have to find that sweet spot. And we definitely can't act like we got it figured out, because there's a flaw that happens when there's like a literal repulsion of knowledge as data is coming your way, as the ability to start to harness more wisdom and understanding a principle at work. But instead you want to, through conviction, through maybe fear of being wrong, through ego, through arrogance, I don't know the energy, but you're emitting the falsehood. You're emitting the I got it figured out. You're emitting I have no time to contemplate. I have no time to see truth. That's what's truthfully coming out, but of course it's blanketed by your projection of your mental energy, and the emotional energy of conviction. And so how are we going to understand how things work when we have that energy? So this is a big humility thing. And of course, I'm over here saying NPCs have no souls and I'm being rude. How am I humble? At least I'm humble in the way that there's an endless openness to God. Please show me, God. I'm listening. I'm open eyed. I'm willing to be shown. And again, there's this big thing with the NPCs where there's this heavy insertion of, again, this arrogant, how are you in authority, but you're speaking with immense conviction. And for me, I think it's important that we give people guidance. We give people strong attempts at guiding them and supporting them through knowledge and through planning and strategizing and giving key details at necessary points. Someone's asking about lifestyle change. I know a lot about physiology. I'm going to say some stuff. Not just experiential knowledge. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of it's just theoretical knowledge. That's the life we live. There's science that says this, there's science that say that. They're both supported. And you bring one up, and yet now you're seen as you're instantly wrong. So when you're putting out that type of data, you've got to be a little hands off. You can't have that conviction that this is the way. And this is the type of shit that has led so many people away from science, religion, and spirituality. Lifestyle changes for the better. Get in shape, go to the gym, lose weight, whatever. That conviction just really hurts us. So you can say your piece, you can try to do your thing, but I would say just be a little more, but I don't know. This is my actual assumption and read on the situation. It's my actual prescription. I'm gonna let a bygone be a bygone. I'm gonna let you go figure it out for yourself. I don't technically know. There are some things that you have 100% more experience with, and I'm not gonna say don't have conviction in those areas. But yeah, man. The skill of this comes from high openness. You're willing to entertain possibilities, pattern sensitivity. You gotta start to track shit. Back to when I was like, oh, I was really good at trivia. I was always a noticer. I was always picking up a piece of data and storing it later for when it was relevant. And I'm very thankful my brain, well, I don't even remember what I remember, and then a thing will trigger a relevancy ding. And so we got to start doing that. Stop being so fucking autopiloted. Be present, pick up data, trust your body to store it appropriately. And again, this is a big problem we have with NPCs is they pattern recognize on the falsehoods. You know what I'm saying? So it's not a perfect skill. You can say all the vaccine facts. Oh, cool. Pfizer said this. Who give a fuck? Metacognition, you got to watch your own thoughts forming. This is a big one. Back to the humility, back to the ego, back to the mental body versus causal body. The mental body, ego, inner narrative, whatever you want to say. There's different levels of inner narrative. As the Buddhists say, you're not your thoughts. You're not even the one observing your thoughts. You're not even the one observing the one that's observing your thoughts. There are just layers and layers and layers of the self. And it's our job to kind of climb that ladder. And again, most of us, I know I'm barely over maybe that first or second level, contemplating that. So we got to be open to that and just watch. We have an animal nature. We have an egoic nature that would love to be right, that would love the dopamine hit from giving the right key at the right time. And we would love the dopamine hit from being right. That's a big serotonin hit, hierarchy. Yeah, so we just got to watch our patterns, don't be just reacting and such, try to be a coherent vessel for God to work through you. Analogical reasoning, you use one domain to understand another, and that comes down to like naturopathy, cosmology. There's an intelligent design. I'm not saying they're all perfectly aligned, but through the law of correspondence, it's like, well, there's only one person who made one thing that made this one entity. We can't even use those words to describe God, who's made this world, who's made all the worlds. And there's some level of mode of operations that correspond across domains, systems thinking. We got to start to merge with that. And that goes back to the causal body. You start to become more super conscious, and you start to have more of a causal body that understands principles and laws that are not just on the 3D, but all the law of attraction people have tried to tell you about it for years. Law of resonance, all that stuff. And you use this type of super consciousness to grasp one subject thanks to the help of another. And when you grasp a lot of subjects, you start to become a polymath, and it does accelerate how quickly you can understand another. You know what I'm saying? Polymath is, someone who's really good in a lot of sciences and arts. And then spiritual intuition, you trust subtle impressions enough to inspect them. Intuition works like that so quickly. And again, back to the brainwave stuff, we talk about gamma, and allegedly gamma is heavy when you're in the realization phase. When you're realizing a lot of stuff, that's the presence of gamma, or it creates the presence of gamma. What comes first, the bird or the chicken or the egg. Nonetheless, it's like intuition works so fast. And you're bored, you're uninterested, on and on and on, and then bam, all of a sudden, doors are open. That comes back to ideas are making homes in you. Intuition works so quickly, you can get a gut feeling that is insanely accurate. And then, through following that thread, contemplating, opening up to it, your mind can catch up for the most part. And this creates a lot of spiritual ego because people's minds don't necessarily catch up. And it goes back to mental body versus causal body. We don't want you to agree with your own bias. We don't want you to have this strong conviction. We know a million spiritual people who it was revealed to me in a vision, and then they double down, they cope, and they try to get their mind to give them a confirmation bias rather than back to, again, we want that yellow in the aura. We want wisdom. We don't want to be blocking it. We want the causal body to come in, and to do that, it comes back to openness. God, please show me. It's okay if I'm wrong. The truth is beautiful. The truth is amazing. The truth is better than often I would say it's better than when we think, because it's just so grand and powerful. So maybe you weren't Cleopatra, or maybe you're not going to manifest that particular vision, and it's okay. Don't use the mind to create confirmation bias. So that's a big thing. Be open. And then one of the other things is restlessness with surface explanations. This is ChatGPT. Don't hate on me. And you hate dumb flat answers. It says, I was just trying to get some level outline for this video. Yeah, and that's true. It's like I'm shocked. I'll give you an example of one of the reasons I got into nervous system stuff. I know a lot about the physiology. You talk with me, I know a shitload about it. And it's because I was confused by breath workers that were always saying you need to regulate your nervous system. It came with this big bump of therapy speak, becoming trauma informed, moving into the spiritual wellness yoga space, breath work being like the transition of yoga dudes who went and did ayahuasca. And all everyone's saying is you need to regulate your nervous system. And I was confused by that because I'm like, what's that actually mean? Genuinely, what's that mean? Regulate your nervous system. I didn't know. And I would say no one there knows. If I went and hired every person talking about regulate your nervous system, and I tried to see what they had from me, it would be so blanket. They could not answer any of the questions with nuance. They would say some dumb generic take that is so surface level. And so for me, I'm like this with a lot of different fields, and I'm like this across fields, and you'll see as the channel progresses that, we got physiology, we got spirituality, not new ageism, not religion, but deep mystical spiritual science. We got culture and social studies and commentary and ideas for culture. That, again, like a lot of people are willing to complain about culture. They're willing to complain about the conspiracy stuff, but all this stuff is so surface level. And so again, there's a level of NPCism where there's no agency to dig deep, strike that well of oil and create value. You know what I'm saying? Like, where is that? And it comes back to will. And it does come back to ego and humility. It's like, oh, I got it figured out enough to posture like I got it figured out. Back to the serotonin. Serotonin's heavy on social rank. If you have a perceived social rank, your serotonin baseline is up and you feel good about yourself. Great, dandy. Dopamine hit from the IG, from people saying, oh, that's so cool. Great share, because I'm even stupider than you are. And you're cool. Thanks for sharing that. So you got these little small victories that we need to watch out for. What I'm saying? That shit can't save you. If your generic take can't save you. And do you even use this shit to begin with, man? So, I don't know. So clean mode, according to ChatGPT, is wonder, spot a pattern, contemplate a pattern, form a hypothesis, test it, refine it. Dirty mode is wonder, pattern, certainty, fantasy, delusion. So you think about something, you see a certain pattern, immediately you have conviction, or nearly immediately, whatever. That moves you into fantasy, which is the illusion. So I know, such a strange video on NPCism, but yeah, that's my thoughts for you guys. There's so much to say. So yeah, again, what we're trying to do is cure NPCism, which has a lot to do with literally like heavy metals, vaccines, modern media, the CIA getting your favorite musicians on payroll and blocking cool musicians from coming up, having the arts be truly expansive versus like some fucking dumb shit that, I'm not going to shit on all of art, there's so much beauty, but all the cultural social engineering that we're talking about, um, that's designed to create sheeples, and yeah, there's that phrase that came out a little bit ago, how only like 20% of the world had inner narrative. And if that's true, that's insane. That's that metacognition that we're talking about. So there's ways to train all this stuff, so follow along. If you're watching this chronologically, the first course I'm doing is this aura course, which I know a lot of people are gonna be like, that's so fucking weird and irrelevant when it comes to like the real problems of the world. But honestly, the aura is, we're more physical, excuse me, we're more energetic than we are physical. We're more non-physical than we are physical. We live outside of the 3D probably more than we do in the 3D. So I just want to talk about, you know, things are coming out, the technology, the future is not even harnessing fuel in the 3D. They're harnessing fuel. This is going to sound crazy, outside of the 3D, dark matter, dark energy. And so they're able to use that and get machines in the 3D, physical material machines, to work off that harnessing of the energy. So there's obviously a blend, there's a intricate fabric to the interconnectionness, the interweave and, interwoven fabric of reality. And so the aura, it's just like, again, this is something that I speak from experience. It's like, yeah, I got a lot of good things in my life, and it's literally from having clean, good energy. Clean is the word, when you're busy trying to like support others and not snatch. And you can be humble and you can say, God, like, I definitely want to provide for myself. I definitely want that nice thing. I want, there's this word, washape. Don't kill me for this. I'm so fucking not right, but I think it's washape, and I think it's like Lakota or Sioux or something, and it's he who grabs the biggest chunk of meat for himself. So it's like back to this whole aura thing, when you can understand, like, yeah, it would be nice to have that nice big cut for myself, but I'm not going to take things out of this conquesting attitude, but I want to be service oriented. I want to be giving. And if I get a nice cut in an appropriate time when I can really enjoy it and I feel like I'm not exploiting others through it, I will take that, and trust in God through that. So I think my life is relatively good testament to that principle. And there's a big science to it, so again, a lot of this stuff is coming, a lot ironically, is like just to help young men. Everyone's trying to look max, everyone's trying to seduce women, and like Andrew Tate style or whatever, looks max and NLP, manipulate, date shit. I don't know. I just see so many people being so conquesty, and they're following the wrong voices. So ironically, it's like the aura makes you more attractive, brings more opportunities to you, all that stuff. It makes you more attractive, that people feel good around you. But why is that coming from? It's not because you're manipulating the science. It's coming from this earnest approach to purity, through righteousness, through virtue, over vice, over, lower, inferior thought forms, character traits, all that stuff. So, all right, I think we're at the end of it. What are we at? 29 minutes, 60 seconds, basically. Peace. Thanks for watching.